So I thought it would be good to maybe start with forgiveness. And, because you went through a pretty extreme forgiveness opportunity. And it seems like you've come out of that with, like, Teflon.
Hey, that's kind of what I feel like sometimes. All right, so where do we want to start on forgiveness? I have a very different view of forgiveness than I think most people do. To me, forgiveness is about moving into the attitude of appreciation relative to something in the past which you struggled with. So it's a lot more than just letting it go, which is the standard idea about forgiveness, I think, especially in Western society, is that if you're going to forgive something, you're going to completely let go of it. I feel like it's not possible to completely let go of something. And in fact, if we really want to use something to our benefit, we shouldn't be letting go of it. What we should be doing is using that to kind of build the foundation for what our life is to become. Mm-hmm. And so, if you look at the vibration of true forgiveness, and you look at the vibration of true appreciation for something, that is, I'm looking at the aspects of this that I truly enjoy, there's the exact same vibration. So we're using two different words to describe the same vibration. I have only forgiven something fully when I'm able to look back at it and not only not have taken it back, but to see how I would have chosen that if I was to do it all over again.
Right, you're seeing it as a positive experience meant to fuel your continual progress.
Oh, yes. So this whole thing that people say, I'll forgive, but I won't forget, that's our indication that we're not in an attitude of forgiveness. And I don't think that forgiveness is something that can be rushed. Mm-hmm. I understand the vibrational scale completely. And so when you start off in total powerlessness, which is where we are when we're really struggling with something relative to the past, we are in a vibration of powerlessness to the situation. And so moving from there into let's focus on the positive, moving from there into let's feel joy about the situation is like asking someone to vibrationally jump the Grand Canyon and they can't do it. And so what looks much more self-loving and much more feasible is to allow yourself to move up the vibrational scale from this place of powerlessness ultimately into this place that we call forgiveness, which is the same as appreciation. To do that, we need to allow ourselves to go through a major process. Part of that is anger. Part of that is revenge. There's many steps along the line from one place to the next. And we try to, because it's more comfortable for us on the outside, it's more comfortable for me when you're in an attitude of forgiveness than angry all the time. Mm-hmm. I want to rush your forgiveness. And we do this all the time. People sit down and the spiritual teachers say, it's time to forgive. If you forgive, you'll be let off the hook. But these people are saying, okay, but right now, I don't even know how to do that. You're just giving me the spiritual principle. I know I should feel forgiveness, but I don't. Mm. And so for that person, it does not benefit them to move, to try to force themselves into forgiveness. What's beneficial is to try to force themselves into the next best feeling thought. So that next best feeling thought might be a thought like anger. We may spend a long time there. Even me relative to my childhood. I mean, it's like everybody's got this view of me as this transcendent being who teaches spirituality. And the reality is, when I got away from my childhood situation, I spent probably 3-4 years really upset. And I would visualize, because that felt better, I would visualize, going back to the town where I grew up and setting everything on fire. I visualized, like, killing people really violently that hurt me in the past. And the reason it felt emotionally good is because revenge and anger is a vibrational improvement from where I was relative to my past. And so it was very crucial to allow myself or anyone to allow themselves to move into that phase of it and not to guilt themselves, because you watch this a lot where people come from the space of powerlessness, they move in. Okay.
I appreciate that, because it sometimes it makes people feel even worse that they can't feel good.
Oh yeah. So this is what I was just about to say when it cut out, really. So here we are in powerlessness relative to whatever situation we've gone through, and we immediately go into anger and revenge. But then we've been taught that this is not appropriate. It's not okay to be angry. And so we get forced back downstream back towards powerlessness. So we don't ever allow ourselves to actually be okay enough with getting angry that we move through anger. We just start to vacillate between powerless, angry, powerless, angry. And this is where most of our major heinous crimes happen actually in the world, is because somebody has felt powerless for so long, forced them, they've moved into anger and then made an end of that for so long that pretty soon the energy here gets so intense that it has to go somewhere. And now I feel this urge to kill someone. And so I do. So if we would teach people from the very get-go that they don't have to be all the way over here in, happiness. You haven't failed if you're not happy. You haven't failed if you haven't forgiven. Just allow people to go one step at a time, moving up, feeling better and better and better. Of course, that looks like just looking for the feeling of relief. So if I'm looking for the feeling of relief from powerlessness, that might feel like anger. If I'm looking for relief from anger, that might look like pessimism, things like this. If we could just allow people to move towards relief, then we would very quickly move our mentality into a space where we could look back at a situation in the past, see the major benefit, and thus obviously seeing the gift in the situation, we wouldn't want to get rid of it. And so it becomes integral to who we are, but in a healthy way, so we can use it for our benefit instead of feel like it's got us prisoner. That would happen very quickly if we were the kind of race that was capable of allowing ourselves to do those things. And then from that heightened space, the only things we'd be inspired to do are in alignment. I mean, that space is where most people get when the best books on earth are written. I've moved myself into a space where I now see the gift, and now I feel this inspiration to go act. Maybe now I become an inspirational speaker. Maybe now I write that book I never wrote. That's where all of these amazing things come from. But they certainly don't come from us going through a circumstance and then expecting ourselves to be happy or expecting ourselves to be in a space of forgiveness when it's premature. You can never force that kind of state. I think that forgiveness is something that just happens on you. It's natural to who we are. It's natural for us when we begin to focus ourselves more positively and care how we feel enough to find relief. We don't need to seek out and create forgiveness. It just becomes. It is.
What process did you move through after your abusive situation? Did you go for therapy? Did you do a lot of physical exercise? What was that like?
All of the above. I'm kind of one of those people that adheres to this philosophy, I should say. I'm a major... Yeah, do you like this? If only we could be like dogs, right?
Bring the cat as well.
Oh, yeah. My house is nothing but creative chaos.
Love it.
What was I saying? Oh, I'm one of these people that really believes in this idea that it's the cocktail of things that really works for people. So it's not like, oh, I did that one thing and that one thing solved every problem in my life. So when you watch me personally go through a problem, or else even see clients, simplistic, I'll throw a lot of things at people at one time. Same way that I did to myself, because to me it's about I'm going to do whatever makes me feel good, and if that's a lot of things at once, then I don't care what works. So I was doing tons of exercise. I was actually a professional athlete at that time, so I was doing more exercise than anything. And we could argue that in the future I realized that a lot of that was self-abusive, but at the time it was a vibrational improvement from where I was. Because every time I got that endorphin release, I didn't want to run back home, and I was feeling calm and peaceful inside myself for once in my life, and so that was super good. And I added therapy onto that with a notable trauma specialist, and so I chased that kind of route for a while. And then when I started to, and that of course, like anything, brings relief, and then you're ready to move even further. So, I started getting disillusioned with the fact that the mentality in Western medicine, America is still today, is that people who have gone through a childhood like mine have a different shape to their brain, and so no matter how much I might want it, I'm going to be limited in terms of what I can do and not do. And I'm limited in terms of the amount of happiness I can have and not have, given, going through that. It's kind of like, even though these health professionals are the ones that say, oh, here, I'm going to give you the answer to happiness and health, they hold an attitude that we're kind of spoiled merchandise, that if you get messed up under a certain age, that your brain's always going to be dysfunctional, that your life's always going to be difficult, and that we kind of just have to swallow the pill. Mm-hmm. And at first, that actually felt good to hear. Mm-hmm. Because I was like, oh,
Yeah. You don't have to accept
Great.
responsibility.
Well, if I can just accept the fact that I'm messed up and that's how it is. Yeah. So, but then, like after a while, I was like, okay, that doesn't feel good now. Now it doesn't feel good that I've got a limit, a glass ceiling. And then I was like, okay, I started milking therapist. I was, and all the different ones that I was seeing too at the time, different modalities. And I was like, tell me what happiness is. I'm actually genuinely curious. What the hell is happiness? Because like that, why else am I sitting in this chair? And what I discovered is that nobody could tell me. And I was like, okay, this is the basis of your career, is to get people into a state of happiness, and you don't even know what that is or how to create it. So I started to get the message that if I was going to do this thing, I'd have to basically design it for myself. So then I went on a quest. It was like anything that I could get my hands on, anything that I could do in meditation, talking to my guides and everything, anybody that I could talk to. I just started to put together this picture, basically, of what health looks like for someone like me, and what happiness might look like for the totality of the human race. The real benefit of going through struggle is that it makes you ask really big questions.
Sorry, Teal, I lost you there for the last minute.
So that's what set me on this whole thing. From where?
Quest.
Oh. Yeah, okay, so I went on this quest, basically, where anything I could get my hands on and anything that I could observe, any person I could talk to about this, I started doing that. And I put together my own picture, basically, of what happiness really is and what it means to get that for yourself. And that entailed me moving into a much more spiritual path, ironically, more like the one I started off on, if I'm going to be frank. It caused me to move into a much more spiritual space than a traditional healing space, I guess you could say.
What do your parents think about what you're doing now?
They hate it. It's a difficult story to tell, of course, because, my parents are kind of in this position where they are not able to forgive themselves for what happened to me. And as far as they're concerned, what I'm doing right now is publicly exposing their greatest pain, and they have no say in it.
I know, I know the feeling. Yeah.
And so they don't like watching my material. They don't like it all. I think they enjoy the fact that they know that I'm helping people, but that's about it. They don't want to watch my material at all. It's too painful for them to hear about the past, and they feel like the whole world is going to be against them because they know that the question on everyone's mind is, where the hell were the parents? And so they've kind of gone into relative amount of hiding relative to my career. And they've, on many occasions, we've gotten in all-out, blowout fights about me doing this and why I feel like my healing, which part of that is coming into the world with all of this and becoming what I am today, why I feel like that's necessary, if it's going to cause them pain. So it's this kind of attitude with me and my parents right now of, why does my pain have to mean your healing? So it's a really painful relationship. And we're working on it a lot, especially because I have a son, but I'm not going to say it's an easy relationship. I mean, we lost each other. It's like they went through a serious amount of crap as well when I was growing up, and it's not just me that feels like I was kind of robbed of my parents. They were robbed of their child as well. So we're all trying to get to know each other for the first time, kind of.
Do you think it's possible to teach what you're teaching, just to focus on the content and not, in a sense, go into your story too much?
No. I think in some, interviews it doesn't matter. Like, ultimately, I feel like the information stands on its own. It's just that most people are super fascinated with it, so they definitely question me about it. And the reason that I feel like it's so important, one of the reasons for this story to be out in the public, is not only because this is a big deal, actually, in the area where I live, and most girls who go through the kind of thing that I did are not willing to ever come out to the public, period, the end. So, I'm flooded on a weekly basis. I'm literally flooded with emails from girls that are like, "Oh my God, you're like our mascot. I would never have the bravery to do that. Oh my God, it makes me feel so." I mean, they're like freaking out because I have ended the silence, if you will. So that's one element. The second element is, which is the real thing that I like, is that coming from a sort of past that is as extreme as mine is, right? If I can do this, that means that anyone can do this. And it does make me much more approachable for people. Meaning that, if you've lost your whole family in a car accident, are you likely to go see a spiritual guide who, lived a relatively normal life and may have struggled a little bit? Or are you more likely to go for somebody who you can feel has been in the depths of hell? I feel like my story gives people a lot of hope in terms of if I can get through something like that and end up in a relative state of health, then there's nothing that anyone can't do. And that's the message I receive from the people that listen to my material as well, which is the only reason I feel like continuing to be public with it. That, and I don't like the idea of secrecy. Secrecy in the human race is what's causing a lot of problems here, and we all feel like there are some parts of ourselves which we have to hide. And I had to hide this aspect of myself for 24 years. And so part of me, my own personal freedom is just putting everything out there about me. All the crap. All of the good and all of the crap. And being like, you know what? This is how it looks to be so free that you literally don't care what other people do with what you give them. And it feels good because what's ironic is people can't use anything for ammunition when you do that. Because you give your whole story over and then it's like, if anybody wants to use it against you, well, yeah, I was already public with that. There's nothing you can do with that. I've been totally upfront about that. It's good to be in a state of complete openness towards people.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that as well, because, the people on the other side are going to say, that's your side of the story, and since you're such a public figure, you have so much more reach in that sense. So I guess what I'm trying to say is what we go through may be our perspective, but it may not be the perspective of others. But of course, when we're telling it from a place of fact, this happened, then that's, obviously, I can see it how, what you're saying about secrecy makes absolute sense to me. Yeah.
Right, so help me to understand the other perspective which you're presenting. I'm quite interested.
Well, for example, no, I I completely understand what you're saying, because I went through a very difficult childhood myself, and I wrote my story, and put it on my blog, and my parents didn't like it at all. Now, what's interesting about the path that I've been through is that, in a sense, I've been looking at that story because, for example, I'm sure he won't watch this, but my dad was a hoarder. Okay, he used to hoard things at home, and it made the family situation very difficult. Right?
My mother is too, by the way.
And it feels like I'm labeling him when I'm calling him a hoarder. And, my perspective was certainly that it made things very difficult, this and that. And, my perspective was that they fought all the time, like nearly every day, which seemed factual to me, but they don't agree. So it's like, okay, so what exactly happened there, and does it really matter? Do I need to say that they fought every day? And after all that resistance, I dropped it, actually, really, and I'm starting to rewrite my biography to kind of, in a sense, own that anger. Like, I was angry because I thought the world was unjust, and I don't need, or at least I'm not going to put them into that story because I don't feel it's necessary as, because from our perspective, from that kind of, we've gone through that trauma, we've gone through the forgiveness process. We're not blaming them, but it sounds like blame for them, and it also sounds like blame for someone who's not in this paradigm.
Oh yeah.
So from my perspective, I guess where I'm at now is that it feels a bit safer or more wise to just completely own everything that happened to you. You know what I mean? Like, you are the creator of your life, of your reality. You chose this. I chose to be angry. I chose to be abused. I chose to go through the things I went through. And in a sense, you not need to involve all these characters in the story, especially when they're still alive. That's where I'm at, I guess.
I don't see that what I do is much different than that. Because what I teach is ownership of it completely. The issue is when you're dealing with people that are blaming themselves, it does not matter what you say. If you even mention the fact that you were hurt as a child, they'll take the blame for it. It's quite ironic that you were saying what you're saying, because I've been through the same thing with my parents. Everybody's perspective relative to one event is going to be different. And nobody's view is more or less valid, because that's the reality for you. So my parents experienced having some nice camping trips with me, for example, when I was a child, and I don't have that experience because the whole time I was camping with them, I was worried about what was going to happen to me tomorrow. So my experience of that camping trip was misery. Their experience of that camping trip was us together as a family. So there comes this point where you have to realize that relative to perspectives, you're never going to have the same perspective as another person. And so what you get to do is grapple with your own truth. Not try to take other people's truth and assimilate it to ours. To me, that's true ownership.
And what about the relationship with your... Wow, it's getting really bright here. with your abuser. What's happened to him? Abuser? Yeah.
I have no idea, actually. I've deliberately stayed out of trying to figure out where he's at and what he's been doing, because I see him kind of as a catalyst for my life.
But he's still out there?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Now, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be shocked by that.
Oh, a lot of people are always shocked by that, but that's just because most people don't know about our justice system. Yeah, it wasn't even up to me whether we were going to prosecute or not when we went forth with the... I had to tell the cops. So basically, how this turned out is, even though I'm a whistleblower and I'm in the middle of the public eye, it was never my intention to come out public with this story. But when you go into therapy and you start talking about, people stealing little kids and killing them, you're no longer able to keep your, patient therapist confidentiality. So I was put in a situation where my therapist said, look, legally I have to tell the cops. So either you're going to tell them or I'm going to. So that turned into a giant case, and I was in the middle of it for a lot of years, and it was really awful. And then ultimately it was up to the state to decide whether they had enough physical evidence to prosecute, because my hearsay is not enough. You either, when you're looking at bringing up any kind of a case against anybody, it has to be either multiple witnesses or actual physical evidence. And the issue is that even the evidence I did have is not enough to prove every single story that I am telling them. So it would be my word against his. And when it's not me against him in the court, it's the state of Utah against him in a court. It's up to one person to decide whether that's going to go through, and that's the district attorney. And they're not looking at this emotionally. They're looking at this in terms of, can we win this case? Or are we going to waste a lot of time and a lot of state money coming up against somebody who's ultimately not going to be able to be put away based on that evidence? So, and it's ironic, I was toying with this for a really long time because I don't want him to sit in a jail cell. I'll just be honest right now. I'm at a point, and I did once, I wanted him to be as far away from me and little girls as possible. But I've moved into a much different space relative to the situation now, where it's not rehabilitory. It's like just punishment on top of pain, which is the only reason any of us are in the situation anymore. So that's where I'm sitting with that. But I really struggled with that idea, which I really realized for the first time when I went through this, that our court system is set up so that people get off no matter what. I mean, we watched the O.J. Simpson case. You're more likely to get off than get really prosecuted unless the evidence is ridiculously overwhelming. But I actually would rather it that way. I'm the kind of person who, if you ask me the question, would I rather have 5 guilty people free or one who's in there that actually did something? I don't know how that goes, but it's like, would you rather basically have 5 people that didn't do something in jail so that one person who was truly guilty could be in there, or 5 people who were truly guilty free so that the one person,
I know what you mean.
That type of thing. I'm the kind of person who would rather all kinds of people that aren't truly guilty of a crime not end up in a jail setting, even if it meant another person who really was guilty not being in there, you know. That, and I don't believe in the justice system in general, but that was something I was struggling with at the time. Just felt like I should share that.
I wanted to, switching topics now. I wanted to talk to you about YouTube, and I'm quite. I've been watching Spirit Science. I learned about Spirit Science a while ago, and just watching you and Jordan on YouTube, it's to me it's really apparent that there's a renaissance taking place, right? By young people, indigo kids, especially using YouTube and new media to reach out to other people or other
Yes.
people like them. Tell us what your thoughts around this are. It's kind of like a big thing, but to me it's very exciting. First of all,
Oh, me too. I feel like this information age that we're in, and all the new stuff that we're coming up in terms of networking, is an incredible opportunity to get all information available from all over the place somewhere. So, you know, it used to be where if you didn't live in the same country or same town as somebody, you never had access to that information. Now it's like it's at your fingertips.
Yeah.
You had to go travel to India to see this one spiritual guy. Guess what? You don't have to travel, and you see 13 of them every day. In fact, they produce weekly videos, and it's like we have all of these tools at our disposal now for us designing our own process of spirituality. And that is so beautiful to me, because ideally, I feel like we got to stop making people mechanical organisms and keep saying that, you know, this is going to be the answer for all people. For you, it's going to be, I mean, you've got your, you know, teachers potentially, or people who you like material. It doesn't even have to be teacher, but you've got this like collection of the things that work for you, the same way as another person has a collection of the things that work for them. So it's kind of like by using the internet, offer my information to people, so I can focus on what I like doing, which is to produce content. That's what I love. I love waking up with that inspiration to write that article, writing the article, and realizing that, you know, it doesn't take me a lot of extra work. I just post it, and then everyone shares it from there. And it's like technology, ironically, is our first step into oneness. Because even those of us who are, like right now, you're sitting in a totally different place than me. Where are you, ironically?
London.
All right, well, there we go. So you're sitting in London, I'm sitting here, and back when it was not possible for this conversation to happen, but right now we're feeling more unity because now you and I are connecting. It doesn't matter where we are in the world. That's sort of the physical byproduct of a larger spiritual truth, that is, no separation actually exists. So the more we get that, the more united we're going to get. And technology is just a manifestation of that principle.
Well, at the same time, it's I think you still have to use your intuition and guidance when you look out for stuff on the internet, because it can be full of rubbish as well. And
Oh yeah, but I don't distrust people enough to think that they're not capable of knowing exactly what they need. What?
yeah. Now, I guess personally, you know, I have this, in a sense, a perpetual discrimination filter in, just because I don't know, it could be my makeup, you know, being a Virgo, but but you know, like if if someone is saying something, if a spiritual teacher is saying something, you know, I don't let him into my inner sanctum unless, you know, he or she checks out this, that, you know, and when we're talking about the internet, such a vast area, that comes into play even more, because I've been, in a sense, I've encountered some spiritual teachers or spiritual people who I later found out were, you know, not quite what I thought they were. You know, like, they can be some very intelligent, very deceptive people out there who seem to be saying all the right things, but if you're looking at it from the mind, then you can get sucked in, but you have to look at it with the heart. which is what I've learned personally.
Oh, and here's my belief around that. We have this very unhealthy belief, which is that all teachers have to be in alignment to teach. And the ironic part is, it's impossible when you're living here in the physical dimension to be in alignment 24 hours a day, because expansion is the byproduct of someone broadcasting new desires that are born of contrast and then lining up with those things. So people who are spiritual teachers just make more of a practice of staying in alignment more often. So we try to close this gap in seconds, whereas sometimes it takes people days or, months. But our idea that basically somebody, in order to be a teacher, has to be in a relative space of health would mean that we had no teachers. It literally would. You're never going to be out there meeting anybody, regardless of how high vibratory they are. You're never going to meet somebody that's in perfect alignment 24 hours a day, which is why I feel like what you're saying is important, looking at things with a heart, because that's going to, guess what? It's not like you're going to be disillusioned by somebody. And it's not like you're going to have to wall yourself off to their information, because you make it not about the person, you make it about what information they're sharing. So if they share one thing, let's separate the thing they're saying today from the rest of who they are. I don't have to accept all of everything that Teal says just because it's Teal. So you separate it and you say, okay, if this one thing that she's saying today feels good to me, I'm going to own that vibration and make it a part of my life. And if that feels good to continue, I'll continue it. If it doesn't feel good after a while, I'm going to throw it away. So people are sort of like a bundle more than one thing. So I am a bundle of all of these things that I say, and my wish is basically that people would only take the parts of that bundle that feels good and even disassociate it from me. Who cares if it's coming through me? I'm just a mouthpiece of the universe anyway. That would be a lot more beneficial, because when we're approaching spiritual teachers with this attitude of, I'm really scared of spiritual teachers because I'm scared to let myself go towards you and sort of accept everything that you say, I don't feel like people should be anyways. That's not the way we were meant to live our lives. Everything I do and say is just a manifestation of your reality right now. And the same goes for you, vice versa. So I should just be looking at the reflection, taking what benefits me, taking note of what doesn't. And it should really be about me, not feeling like my reality can be influenced by somebody else, because that's the first misstep we take. My reality can be influenced by somebody else who's manipulative or who is different than what I think, is an attitude we approach the world with, and then we can receive nothing but that back. We continue to get disappointed with our masters.
And that is intentional, of course, as well. What would you say to kind of like a spiritual dabbling? Because I mean, you certainly espouse quite a loose or exploratory approach to spirituality. What about it sounds like I'm some old man saying, no, do one thing for a whole life. But what would you say to someone who says, don't be a jack of all trades, master of none? Pick one path that fits you and just do it.
I have never met somebody, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. I'll be the first to admit that I've not seen a lot of things, and it can be quite possible that what one person needs is to dedicate themselves to one path. And that will feel good to them emotionally. But I have not personally ever met somebody that's done that hasn't done it from a space of some kind of self-abuse. It's the expectation that you should be one way or the other. And it's the distrust in the self to know in the moment what is right, rather than sort of become your own disciplinarian. So the attitude of I have to discipline me into wellness is the opposite of the universal truth, which is that you already are wellness. All you need to do is clear the things out of the way. So the vibration that I've seen up to now, of course I'm admitting there may be exceptions. The vibration that I've seen up to now, when I've seen people that pick one thing and are very, very devout about it, is that they're doing so with an attitude of I don't trust myself to be good if I don't treat myself with this kind of discipline.
You're being quite harsh on the Zen monks.
And so that aside, that kind of thing just like dropped to the side. I also, there's an issue too, because then, for a lot of people in our community, and when I'm looking at the world, I feel, and it's my projection, but I feel as if people on this planet in general, if they were put in touch with their own spirituality, whatever that looked like, they would live happier lives that were more in alignment with themselves. rather than paying attention to what society says they should do, or any of these other distractions. And so when you take a snapshot of the average person, it's just important for them to know how they feel, because that's their connection to spirituality, right? And so I don't feel like it's very feasible for many people to go, quit their jobs, move to a monastery, and then focus entirely all day, every day on that one thing. All they want is to feel better. To be honest, that's what most people want. We just want to feel better. So I feel like what works for them is to let themselves off the hook, to look at them and say, listen to me, there's not an ingredient here which you're missing. All you need to do is literally let yourself go in the direction of something that feels good to you. There's nothing more or less spiritual about eating a sandwich and enjoying it than there is about sitting in a monastery listening to a is the fact that everything in our physical dimension, every job, every item, everything is an extension of source energy, and thus spiritual in nature. And so there's nothing more or less spiritual about somebody working in a tax office than there is about somebody who has my job.
Well,
so it's important for people to know that a spiritual life doesn't mean I'm going to go quit everything and go become a spiritual guide or spiritual person or a monk. A spiritual life for me might actually mean working with money, might actually mean being a vet. Do you see how that creates kind of pain when we say this is spiritual, this is not spiritual? When source is kind of, this plate is an extension of me. How is that less spiritual than you?
I know absolutely what you're saying. Yeah, but I guess starting with the base definition of spirituality being non-physical, I guess it's helpful for somebody to get into it, and then, in a sense, you have to learn the rules before you can break the rules. Yeah. Well, do you also think maybe spirituality has evolved over history? In a sense, more austere practices were needed centuries ago.
I think that it's getting truer and truer. So we start out with what our rudimentary understanding of spirituality is, and as each generation is born, it moves into higher and higher states of spirituality. So as far as I'm concerned, one of the higher states of spirituality is to move into a space of allowing instead of rigidity. So the space of allowing says, I'm going to do whatever feels good in the moment. The state of rigidity says, I'm going to force myself to sit down and meditate 20 minutes every day.
Yeah. And in a sense, there's a huge karmic baggage, because we still have that patriarchal, school system that...
Yeah, not for long. You're a skeptic. My goodness.
I'm a skeptic. Yeah, I am a skeptic. Yeah.
Do you see the pain in that condition? It is true that, from your perspective, building walls against what you had to survive is definitely something which kept you safe. But if I approach the world from an attitude of skepticism, then I'm building a wall between myself and the world, and so I can't really experience oneness to its fullest degree if I'm in an attitude of skepticism towards anything. Skeptics are the byproduct of painful lives. But skepticism continues the painful life.
Yeah, well, yes, it is clinging on to the past. It is. It's the old me, in that sense. Remnants of the self that did well for me in my previous life, but maybe doesn't serve me anymore.
I would see skepticism the same way that I would see dissociation. So you'll watch people dissociate from their emotions and dissociate from their bodies. Why? Because when I'm going through trauma, it's better to not identify with my body. And then when you progress a little bit in healing, you realize that that very thing which once helped you cope is the very thing that's in your way.
Mm. Well, I guess, what about, I don't know if you've seen these non-dual teachers. Teachers who just talk about awareness and just talk about you being pure consciousness. Does that have an element of being detached and skeptical?
Hell no. Consciousness is totally non-skeptical. All it does is observe with no judgment. That's not the same as skepticism. Skepticism is walking into an attitude or a situation with an attitude of, I'm going to distrust you first and prove it to me later that I can trust you.
Mm. The sun is really freaky.
So if you watch a skeptical mind, you understand that this is good timing when you keep getting blasted.
Yeah, it is pretty funny, actually. It's like, yes, fine, let it in.
Oh, that's funny, I'm sorry. I love that. See, the universe has a sense of humor.
It does. The universe has a sense of humor.
We can laugh at it.
Yeah. I can't even see myself now. So when do you see this fall of the patriarchy?
What do you mean? The fall of the patriarch?
As in, you said not for long.
I see the fall of patriarchy happening on the heels of people, men specifically, learning how to come into divine masculine. Not the balance shifting towards feminine. Big difference. So right now in the spiritual community, you've got a lot of people that are saying, oh my gosh, masculinity has taken over femininity for so long that we need to restore the balance and femininity needs to rise up. And, it's actually not the true story. What it is that masculine, that which is basically at the heart of patriarchy, has been in a state of powerlessness and operating from that state for so long that it has never come into divine masculine yet. And femininity has been in resistance to masculinity, feeling powerless for so long. That's why we're a vibrational match to each other still, that we have not come into our power. So when females choose to come into divine feminine and males choose to come into divine masculine, simultaneously we will rise up, and there is no trumping of that vibration. It's like you can't say that white wins out over black. They're two different vibrations, and if both rose in tandem, one could not triumph over the other, nor would they want.
Hmm.
That's when patriarchy falls, because patriarchy is the direct result of people being insecure in themselves enough that they feel as if their happiness depends on controlling others.
Hmm.
That's not power, that's powerless. So when that ceases to be the case, patriarchy will fall. It's part of why I came in female, by the way.
Explain.
So part of why I chose to become in female instead of male, it was an interesting choice for me, but it's because women have felt disempowered for so long and so angry at men for so long that it's very important that they have somebody who is in the world who is able to demonstrate what it might look like to move into divine feminine instead of resist men. Do you understand? The feminine energy needs to understand what empowerment looks like, and that does not look like triumph over man. It does not look like this, I'm the single woman who's out there in the world with a job, who does it all, because that's the story we've been fed for years and years, which is that you'll only have power if you're totally by yourself, if you're resisting the place that men have put you in, and that's how it is, and that's the opposite of freedom. And it's not soft. We're dying of it, frankly. Women are dying left and right because we expect ourselves to move into that kind of a resistant position. So it was very amazing. I think it's important for there to be multiple women in the world who are able to demonstrate what divine feminine looks like. The same way that it's very important for many to be in an aspect of divine masculine, demonstrating what that looks like, because our view of divine masculine right now, which is the opposite of patriarchy, patriarchy
Sorry, Teal, I lost you
is
there.
our vision of the masculine is like, brutalizing people, being the head of the household, and all of those traditional roles. It's horrible, and it's not the truth. So these men who are able to show what divine masculine looks like, support, what it looks like to take a supportive role, an encouraging role, what it looks like to come into your own energy and to be really forward moving, that type of energy is something which people need demonstrated as well. So you're going to have a lot of people, not just myself, a lot of people cropping up who are sort of leaders into what divine feminine looks like. The same way you'll see a lot of men cropping up who are teachers in terms of what divine masculine looks like, and suddenly everyone has role models. And role models are beneficial not because you're mimicking somebody else, but because you get to see what that might look like, and that gives you some kind of bearing between where you are and where you want to be.
Mm.
And it will feel good when we're not resisting each other.
Yeah, that's very beautiful. And I see that with you living in this household of 8 people, and it's like you're free to express yourself, but you're also not in control of the situation.
Oh, not at all. And I put myself deliberately square in that position because I really like being questioned. And I understand that a lot of my progression as a spiritual guide has to do with me never getting into a place of power where I'm convinced of my own righteousness. And I'll tell you right now, there is nothing that pushes you towards your own expansion better than trying to get 8 people in one house to agree or to find harmony. So, if I stuck myself up in a glass cylinder there and like nobody questioned me, then I would not be able to come into who I really am. It's uncomfortable, but it's about me walking downstairs and somebody saying, okay, I had a real problem with something you did yesterday. Can we sit down and have a conversation with it? That I go, oh, let's question myself. Where did that come from? Do I have some patterns which aren't really beneficial to myself and thus the world? And if I'm able to move into a space of higher health, then guess what? My teachings get better too. Everyone benefits from that. That's why I started the Shadow House thing. Did you see that?
No, not yet.
All right, it's my little baby brainchild. Ready? So I decided to do something really risky, which is considered career suicide for spiritual guides. Which is because thanks to the invention of live stream, I am going to get even more out there with my story, and I'm going to put all my shadow crap out there as well. So basically, when anybody in the house is having a major fight, we're going to switch stream on so that people can see what it looks like to come from that vibration into harmony again, and how we could use some of these shadow aspect processes in our day-to-day life so they can actually see it in the process. So, we'll do it when 2 people are arguing. We're going to attack one person only, all of us, and then we're also going to sit down and all of us do it together as a group so people can actually watch what shadow work looks like. And to me it was like real scary at first, but then I started loving the idea, and we did one episode and the response was awesome. Even though, I came out into the world, I'm like, I realize I stand on stage, and guess what? I talk about all this and how awesome it is to parent, and guess what? My number one fear is I'm a crap mother. So, I was out with that in the public eye, and I was like, going through the shadow process, dealing with it, figuring out where it came from, switching the thought around, showed people what that process looked like. And so, I held my breath for a good 20 minutes after we released that episode, and I was like, I've just killed my career, But it was exactly the opposite. The response we got was overwhelming. People were like, this is the best thing you've ever done. You've never been more approachable. Now we're feeling like it's possible for us to be in a state of, a heightened place because we're watching that you struggle with the same stuff we do. And now I get how to do the process, and it was awesome. So we're doing this.
That is amazing. Yeah. So I put a lot of personal stuff about myself out there as well, and I think a lot about censoring it because it gives... again, it's the old paradigm. I guess you never see an old school spiritual teacher do that.
Oh yeah, but the old school spiritual teacher is dead. I will tell you this up front. It's dead by popular demand. They're asking for us to be more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think what's in alignment with our own expansion is to actually go there to that vulnerable space. And I think that we're going to become much better teachers because of it, because there's no corruption when you're that exposed.
There's nothing else to expose, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the world itself keeps us in check.
Man, that is scary.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
But you know what's ironic? They'll love you for it. Yeah. I gotta remind myself of that, but they will love you for it. Because no matter what, we are looking for oneness and unity. That is the number one drive, spiritual drive in all beings. And so when you are vulnerable with yourself, they're 10 times more likely to be vulnerable with you. They will love you for what we call weakness, because it's the opposite of weakness.
So is there a line to be drawn at all? What about your sex life? Are you going to talk about your sex life?
I don't draw a line at all. In fact, that's one of the things I talked about.
Right.
Wonderful. Yeah, on screen. I was like, yeah, guess what? I was... It came up in the middle of the thing. So, yeah. No, I'm pretty up and about all of it. Yeah.
Oh, great. Smashing paradigms here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Besides, that's going to be one of the shadow processes we do. I already know it. Because there's so much sexual dysfunction in the world. I'm pretty sure, not even pretty sure, I already know 100% that one, if not a lot of our shadow episodes are going to involve our relationship with sex. And in order to involve, in shadow work, it's all personal stuff. So we're going to have to come out with, because this happened to be back when, or because I got this way, this is my fetish now, and, that type of stuff. That's all going to have to come out on the table. This is part of our lives. And I am not into secrecy. I'm one of those people that will tell you, by virtue of experiencing my life growing up, that what really causes this covert pain where things can go unnoticed for years and years is the fact that we don't talk about it. We're expected to kind of keep that thing hush-hush. So if we keep our sexuality hush-hush, guess what we get? We get people like Ted Bundy. We get people like the person I grew up with. And we get a lot of people that are just, really struggling with their sexuality and not able to even talk about it or get help with it. And so they're in that position for 20 years. Why? Because it's a taboo subject. And it's a big part of humanity.
Well, I'm going to ask, what about the audience that just want to hear it? But I already know your answer. So.
Yeah, it's totally fine if they don't want to hear it. Then that's the portion of my teachings that they don't need to listen to. I did not come here to make everybody fall in love with me, which is what I would be doing if I was censoring myself. I'm here to offer up anything that I feel in alignment to offer up and let people do with it what they will. I have no control over what they're going to think of me anyways.
Yeah, that's very liberating, actually.
And that's my central theme is freedom.
I wanted to ask you last about your spiritual guides.
Okay.
What is that connection like? Do you hear them in your mind? Do you speak to them, or how do you speak to them?
Oh, I see them. So basically, when they enter the room, it's as visual as me seeing you. They hold a different vibratory rate, which is the only reason I know they're not actually here physically. But when I was young, it was very difficult for me to decipher who was physically manifested and who was non-physically manifested. So it's a very visual, very auditory experience for me. It's not like in the mind's eye.
Can you call on them for any question that you want?
Yes.
Would they give you the answer for very specific things?
Oh yeah, but this is why they're so damn frustrating, is because they offer me information from their perspective, different than source perspective. It's a lot more individual perspective. So even though it's a more expansive perspective than the one that I hold in this physical dimension, therefore a lot of their advice tends to be awesome. They'll still give me whatever they think is the most in alignment for right now. And a lot of what they do is what I do to people, which is, let's throw a question back at you instead. Because, they understand that what's in my highest good is not them figuring out my life for me. It's me figuring out my life for me, and they're here to help me for it. So I have a great many times where I'm quite frustrated with the fact that they won't just feed me an answer. But, I always love it after the fact when I get that feeling of it really being something which was integral to me, meaning I went through the damn experience. Now there's no doubt in my mind. It's not like I'm listening to somebody else.
Do you think it's essential for people to develop a relationship with their guides?
No.
Why?
I don't think it's essential at all, because if it was essential, we would be born seeing them and continue seeing them. If it's essential, it would never be a program for us to not be able to see them. I feel like if a lot of people did get into touch with their spiritual guides, they would place their spiritual guides in place of their own internal guidance system. So I feel like usually the point at which spiritual guides start to become visible, or people start to really be able to interact with their spiritual guides, is the point at which a being can trust themselves to answer their own questions. So it's like you get them when you don't need them anymore, you know? It would not be beneficial for us to know, you know, to really have a direct experience with them all the time if we were still
Hey, Teal.
Yeah, I'm there.
I lost you at distrust.
Now your image is not up. There we go.
Yeah. Sorry about
Are we back on?
Yeah, we're back.
Where did you lose me?
Distrust. Oh, it was about talking about if we were always listening to them, then we wouldn't trust ourselves.
Yeah, we would not be. We would be living our lives by consensus instead of living it according to our intuition and our own internal guidance. And that's the reason we're here, basically, to find our way back to source. We need to find it in our own hearts, not find it elsewhere. And elsewhere would include guides. So I think that it's a valuable tool for some people. Do I think it's necessary? Hell no. Why? Because you are your connection to source energy. Your guides are not your connection to source energy.
What is intuition?
Intuition is you lining up vibrationally in such a way that the source energy flow from what you call your higher self, so your source stream, right? So we could think of source kind of like this water, and the stream that's coming out of that water is now what you call Teal, or, you know, Kenneth. So it's you lining up with that source stream to such a degree that the perspective of your higher self, your source self, can be shared with your physical body here.
And we get in that place easier when we're vibrating at a higher frequency.
So much easier.
And the best way to do that is to find where your relief is.
Oh yeah, and I shouldn't say so much easier. I should say it's literally the only way to get in tandem with that, because that's what your emotions are. When you're feeling positive emotion, that's the indication that you hold the same vibration as your higher self holds. So it's not possible for you to have pure intuition and not be in a high vibratory state.
So is the goal ultimately to develop into our higher selves?
Yes.
And is there a higher self above that higher self?
Yes.
And it goes on and on.
It goes on until you can't trace it anymore, because the perspective at that point is oneness with no separation. So there can only be a higher and higher and higher until there's no longer a higher, because there's no higher or lower. There's no difference between this perspective and this perspective. That's what we call the quantum field. So source divides and divides and divides and divides, and we are one such division. Division cannot conceptualize of that oneness.
Do you see the disclosure of extraterrestrials in the near future?
I do. What?
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Have you had interactions with ETs?
Of course, yes. Are like guides, where they only do what they feel is in the best interest of humanity. And so if, in general, there is no real way for them to come down and make themselves only known to the demographic here that is in alignment with them. And so the consensus amongst them is that to come down right now would push humanity into. Once that table turns, you better believe there will be a public reveal.
Sorry, we missed you there at a crucial bit. Once they come down here.
Yeah, well. Once what it is that once humanity turns that page, and the majority of humanity is in a place where they are asking for the reveal from a space of that would help me feel good, not from an aspect of resistance of it.
Gotcha.
Then there will be a very public reveal.
But that is still uncertain at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that too. Yeah. How's Teal Eye going?
Pretty good. I've been in so much drama this last, because things have been clearing out of my life like crazy. I've been kind of decluttering my own personal life so much that Teal Eye hasn't been my main focus for the last probably 4 months. So I can't say that it's moving faster than anything else, but I can say that I have people that are coming forward constantly wanting to work with it, and it's kind of like I don't even know where to put these people. So what that spells is awesomeness, because when I decide where to put them, I will have a ginormous team, huge team, because everyone wants this kind of vision so much that it really is a team. I got people coming forward constantly. So I'm really excited. I know that the way things work with me is that things kind of wait in the works for a little bit. The idea is born and it kind of percolates, and then when everything moves into alignment, it happens so damn fast that all of us can't keep up. And I know that this business is going to be the same.
I've run out of questions. Teal, thank you so
At
much.
12:22.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This was a really enjoyable one. You asked me questions that have never been asked before, so I think a lot of people will like this interview.
Yeah, and I like to do this more, actually. It would be, well, if you're up for it, it would be nice.
Of course I'm up for it.
Great.
I hate talking, don't you know?
You have so much out there, I don't know what to watch, so I'm just, guided to see what I want to see. And the last one I saw of the cat and the one of cooking, so yeah, that rocks my boat so far.
I offered a good meditation today.
Very good, very good, very good. Okay, Teal, thank you so much.
All right, love you.
Bye. Peace.
Bye.